phone. Oh, Davy, just look what a mess you're making. Hello? Oh, he's in the barn. I'll have to call him. Just a minute. Ed! Ed! Oh, Edward! Hello? Oh, hello, Mr. Duke. Well, Mr. Duke, I know he was counting on getting delivery today. Well, yes, well, I'd better let you talk to him about it. Hang on a minute.
We've just been looking in on the Roberts family, and you can see they've been having some problems, communications problems. They encountered some real obstacles in trying to run their household and the business of the farm. Recognizing some of these problems, the Bell Telephone Companies, a few years ago, decided to make a thorough study of farm communications to see how they could be of greater help to the farmer and his family. We began by talking to farmers all across the nation, and we found that many encountered the same problems the Roberts did.
Well, I'm always missing telephone calls when the wife's away.
I waste a lot of time and money running back and forth to the house to make calls about farm prices, equipment, feed orders, and many other things.
Sometimes I'm just too busy to leave what I'm doing to answer the phone.
The farmers' wives, too, had their problems.
I keep the records, and I'm always having to run outside and ask my husband questions.
Well, with the boys and my husband tracking mud in every time to answer the telephone, I just can't seem to keep my house clean.
It seems like every time I come out here to work with the eggs, the phone rings.
There was something else that came to light during our survey of communication on the farm, a whole new idea brought up by the farmers themselves.
Well, I've always wondered if there wasn't some way of hearing what's happening out in the yard while we're here in the house.
We asked other farmers what they thought of this.
I'd say that's a pretty good idea myself, especially during the farrowing season when the sow's liable to mash the new pigs.
Well, yes. If I could hear what was going on in the yard, I could keep track of those kids.
Our survey convinced us that the problem of communication on the farm was entirely different from that of any other business. For one thing, farms by their very nature are spread out. Someone has said that the average farmer walks over 150 miles a year, just between the house and the barn. This takes time, and time means money. In some seasons, you might even say it's priceless. By the time our study was finished, it became apparent that an entirely new system had to be developed to meet the special communication needs of the farmer and his family. Bell engineers went to work on the problem, designing new equipment, testing, adapting, redesigning, and testing again. Finally, they believed they had the answer. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and the system would have to be tested in actual use to see if it really did the job. Accordingly, the systems were installed in more than 100 farms. Farmers put it to work for over a year and reported to the telephone company just what they thought of it. Their suggestions helped the company to make further improvements. And this system, the farm interphone, has finally developed, got the wholehearted approval of the farmers. Here are the components. The telephone instrument with push-to-talk bar and associated speaker, an outdoor loudspeaker, a small ringer, and an equipment box. Now let's see how it fits into the farm. Here's a typical layout of a general farm. Before the installation of the system, there was just a conventional phone in the kitchen. This phone call could be very important to the farmer, for the phone is his connection with his market and his suppliers, with the implement dealer, the seed dealer, the vet. But we may never know who was calling, for there was no one in the house to answer the call. Now let's install the new farm interphone system. Since this farmer spends much of his time in the barn and a great deal of time in the shop, we'll put phones with speakers in both locations. And we'll put a loudspeaker in the farm yard where it can be heard over most of the rest of the farm. Now the phone rings. Again, there is no one in the house. But as it happens, the farmer is in the barn.
Hello. Oh, hi, Joe. Yeah, I'm glad you called. I've been trying to get in touch with you.
Or take another example. The wife is in the garden when the phone rings. She hears the phone ring from the loudspeaker in the yard and goes to the house to answer the phone. But it turns out the phone is for her husband. She doesn't know where he is, so she simply calls him on the farm interphone.
Out in the barn, I'll get him for you.
Telephone, Sam.
Okay. I'll get it in the barn.
Mr. Tate, Sam will be with you in just a minute.
Well, that saved a lot of looking and calling around the farm, didn't it? Now, let's take a closer look and see exactly how that call was handled. When the wife found out the call was for her husband, she merely operated this button to hold the call, and then turned this button to call her husband who was in the barn. Then she pressed down this bar and spoke into the phone.
Telephone, Sam.
Her voice was carried to every speaker location on the farm, the machine shed, the barn, and the loudspeaker in the yard.
Telephone, Sam. Telephone, Sam. Telephone, Sam.
When she released this bar, she could hear anyone answering over the speakers.
Okay. I'll get it in the barn.
You can see that the farm interphone will be useful anytime the wife wants to call her husband.
Sam, will you be ready for dinner in about 15 minutes?
Better make it 30 minutes. And send Billy out here to help me.
You can also see that the system is quite flexible and is really custom designed for every farm. Suppose this were a poultry farm, for example. In such a case, the farmer would spend most of his time around the poultry houses and would need phones and speakers here. Or suppose this were a hog breeder's farm. He would probably want a loudspeaker in the farrowing house and one in the shed. On a truck farm,